All right, ladies and gentlemen, you are locked on Falcons. I'm your host, Aaron Freeman, and today I'm giving you my rapid reaction to the Falcons' 27-25 Week 9 win over their hated rivals in the New Orleans Saints.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So, guys, you know me. I'm Aaron Freeman, been covering the Falcons for many years, formerly at FalcFans.com, RIP, still going strong on Twitter at FalcFans, giving you weekly content over at the Falcoholic, the SB Nation website for the Atlanta Falcons, and of course, the host of this illustrious Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is a rapid reaction where I will be giving you my breakdown of the Falcons' Week 9 performance against New Orleans Saints, which they managed to prevail despite a very, very iffy finish. Almost another collapse from the Falcons this week, but they managed to hang on in the end. We'll sort of give you the lowdown for those of you that might have missed the game, might have missed the drama, updating you guys on the game summary and then going through the back and forth. Then I'll be handing out my grades for the various units of the Falcons this week, looking at the offense, the defense, the special teams, looking at the run game, the pass offense, etc., for those various aspects of the game. And then sort of our final part of today's episode will be sort of talking about the big question I have coming out of this game, which is this game a turning point for this Falcons team? Is this what we should expect? You know, a team that can beat what was arguably a much better team in the Saints on a more consistent basis, in particularly coming up these next couple of weeks where they face some better quality opponents than they have these last couple of weeks. Is this a turning point for this Falcons season? And can we really see this team, now that they're back to 500 for the first time in 3 years, potentially, you know, building upon this and starting to win some bigger games coming up? So we'll get into that later on today's Locked On Falcons. But before we get to that, I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Falcons your first listen of the day. And it's, of course, free and available on a variety of podcast platforms, including Apple, Odyssey, Google, Spotify. And of course, you can now find Locked On Falcons on YouTube. Subscribe to the Locked On Falcons YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that like, make sure you leave a comment, and, you know, tell all your friends about me, man. So that's what I want to say. And we'll get into that game summary, and we'll talking a little bit about the last episode of Locked On Falcons. On Friday, we talked about the Falcons needing to get off to a fast start in order to take the Saints running game out of the equation. They didn't really get off to that fast start. They were able to get a field goal on their second offensive possession. And on that drive, it started off with a big play from Matt Ryan to Kyle Pitts on a deep crosser for a 39-yard gain. Then Cordarrelle Patterson caught a 13-yard pass on a 3rd and 4 to get the Falcons into the red zone. But unfortunately, the Falcons' momentum sort of ground into the I can't say the drive ground to a halt thereafter. And Younghoe Koo, they had to settle for a 32-yard field goal from kicker Younghoe Koo. The Saints were very focused on pounding the ball down the Falcons' throat on their opening possessions, with Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara averaging, you know, nearly 8 yards per carry on 9 shared touches on their first 2 possessions for them. But unfortunately, Trevor Siemian was not as efficient throwing the ball. Whenever they did choose to drop back to throw, he completed just half of his 6 throws for a combined 10 yards on those first 2 possessions, and the Saints punted both times. Now, with the second quarter beginning, each team wanted to sort of spark their offense and was aggressive on 4th and shorts, but both teams were stopped. The Saints had the first attempt on a 4th and 3, and, you know, it should have converted, but tight end Adam Troutman dropped the pass after beating Falcon safety Eric Harris on a slant pass. And then the Falcons, with the ball near midfield, basically had 4th and a literal inch. And instead of going for the QB sneak, they handed the ball off to Mike Davis. He got stopped in the backfield by Saints linebacker Pete Warner, and the Falcons lost a turnover on downs. Fortunately, the Saints were not able to take advantage of that, thanks to some pressure on Trevor Siemian. forcing a throwaway on the Saints' next possession. And then the Falcons took over at their 8-yard line with 5.5 minutes left in the first half and started their 4-minute drill. Then that turned into their 2-minute drill. And we've seen this Falcons dink and dunk offense, even though we complain about it, or at least I complain about it quite a bit. It works in the 2-minute drill and the 4-minute drill. That's where you want to be dink and dunk, to be able to move the ball down the field quickly and whatnot. Matt Ryan was connecting on his first few passes. He then converted a 3rd and 1 on a scramble, which they should have done in that 4th and inches. Then you saw Kyle Pitts beat Quan Alexander on a 3rd and 5 for a 16-yard gain that got the ball in the Saints territory. Russell Gage then showed up with 2 big catches, including a 20-yard gain to get the ball into the red zone. Matt Ryan then continued to show good mobility on the game, was able to escape the pocket, flip the ball to Patterson, get it down inside the 5, and the Falcons scored 2 plays later on a quick slant off an RPO to Olamide Zaccheaus, with Matt Ryan fitting the ball into a tight window. And that was the first of 2 touchdowns for Zaccheaus in this game, and that put the game at the halftime with the Falcons up 10-0. Now, with the Saints down 2 scores, they were kind of forced to abandon their running game, but Simeon was a little bit sharper in the second half. He was able to connect with Deontay Harris and Alvin Kamara on that opening possession. That led to a 12-play scoring drive that put 3 points on the board. So now the Saints were down 10-3. The Falcons followed that up with a scoring drive of their own, getting a big play from Olamide Zaccheaus on a 49-yard over route, the flip field position. Then you had Matt Ryan scramble on a rollout untouched to cap off the 7-play scoring drive on a 1-yard score, and that extended Atlanta's lead 17-3. With 5 minutes left in the third quarter, the Saints went on a long, methodical drive to close out the quarter. It included a 4th and 1 conversion, thanks to Tyler Davison jumping off sides, but they couldn't get much more after that point and had to settle for a field goal to cut the lead to 17-6 with about 13 minutes to go in the game. And then the Falcons punted and the Saints were able to move the ball. They got a 19-yard gain thanks to Deontay Harris catching a pass from H-back Taysom Hill. But then Trevor Siemian went right back into the game on the very next play, and James Vaughters was able to win on a speed rush, get around the corner, strip Simeon from behind. Stephen Means was able to scoop up the loose ball and then scurry 32 yards down the field before Traquan Smith tracked him down at the 6-yard line. Stephen Means was injured on the tackle, would exit the game with a knee injury, would not return to the game. But thereafter, the Falcons got a very quick score on a 1-play drive, hitting Olamide Zaccheaus in the back of the end zone on that 1-yard or 6-yard score to go up 24-6 at that point in the game. And that score would be pretty pivotal to the Falcons because they would essentially not do anything on their next 2 offensive possessions, up 18 points with 11 minutes to go in the game. And of course, that would mean that we are at the point in the game where the other team is going to come back. And, it's not prophecy. It's one of God's natural laws. Whenever there is a lead to blow, the Falcons will absolutely 100% of the time blow it. And they proceeded to do that. And Simeon picked the Falcons defense apart on the ensuing drive, completing 7 of 8 passes, including a 5-yard touchdown to Marquez Callaway. Then on the next drive, Simeon was off the mark, but fortunately for him, the Falcons were able to, generate some penalties for him and keep the Saints offense on schedule. You had a pass interference from Fabian Moreau that gifted him, I think 14 or 27 yards. Then you had a roughing the passer on Olamide's, Foye Oluokun on a sack that he had on Simeon, and that gave them another 15 yards or so. And then that's not even factoring another 15 yards that they had on the opening punt return to start that drive on an unnecessary roughness call on Richie Grant on special teams. And so the Saints were able to cap off that drive with a 2-yard touchdown run by Alvin Kamara. Unfortunately for the Falcons, the lob to Adam Troutman on the 2-point conversion attempt was incomplete. So the Saints were now down 24-19 with 4.5 minutes to go in the game. The Falcons did nothing on their next drive. They even tried Felipe Franks at quarterback keeper to try to milk clock. He lost a yard. Ryan was then sacked by Cameron Jordan. That was the first sack that the Falcons had given up all game long. And Matt Ryan was under pressure quite a bit in this game. And for the most part, the Falcons offense was able, despite like that, thanks to Matt Ryan being able to handle that pressure particularly well, keep things in check for the first 46 minutes of this game, but he couldn't escape Jordan. And then on the very next play, he was sacked again by Marcus Davenport, and the Falcons punted the ball back to the Saints with 2 minutes and 46 seconds left in the game. And you had a 26-yard punt return by Deontay Harris, where he nearly broke it for the touchdown. Then on the very first play from scrimmage, you had a 22-yard gain to Kenny Stills. He beat Eric Harris on the double move. Then you had the 2-minute warning. Then 2 plays later, Stills beat Fabian Moreau on an 8-yard score. Kamara was stuffed on the 2-point conversion, so the Saints weren't able to convert that, but they were up, 25-24 with a minute left in the game. So what do the Falcons do? Well, they rise up, of course. And so you had on the very first play, Cordarrelle Patterson beating Paulson Adebo on a go route. Matt Ryan just laid it up perfectly for him. Patterson caught it in stride, broke the tackle, then basically scampered 64 yards down to the Saints 11-yard line before he got knocked out of bounds. And of course, at that point in time, it's, you're just setting up for the Younghoe Koo game-winning field goal. You just need to run it once, make the Saints use that last timeout, and just, kneel down 2 times, and you should have it good to go for Koo, ready to kick the walk-off field goal. And of course, they run the ball, and Mike Davis fumbles it. Fortunately, the Falcons recovered, but man, it was close. That was a worst fumble of Mike Davis's career, because he doesn't have many. I think he has 2 this year, and that's like 4 for his entire career. So fortunately, the Falcons were able to fall on it. They did kneel down twice and get down the ball. The game clocked down to 2 seconds, and then Koo lined up for the 29-yard field goal and hit it, and the Falcons walked away with the win. So it was definitely a very dramatic game, really solid first 3 quarters for the Falcons, terrible fourth quarter for the Falcons, but a final great minute for the Falcons in that fourth quarter. And so we'll get into the grades that the Falcons deserve on offense, defense, and special teams, and whether they got things together. But speaking of getting things together, does this sound familiar? You've got that one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows, another where you're watching your sports highlights on your phone, and then you got your father's, brothers, nephews, cousins, former roommate Deborah's login for your preferred streaming service. Well, I want to tell you about a way that you can get all the entertainment that you love without any of the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. And it's called DirecTV Stream. It brings you live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so that you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes, no need to buy a new device ever again. And the best part, besides not having to borrow Deborah's login, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more by heading over to directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. So when we're handing out grades and we give them each and every week to the pass offense, rush offense, pass defense, rush defense, and special teams, starting with the pass offense, I'm giving him an A-. I thought Matt Ryan played very well in this game for the most part. The offense went dead in the fourth quarter, and I'm sure most of the fingers will be pointing at the play calling, the offensive line, and they deserve probably the majority of the blame there. But Matt Ryan did miss a couple of throws on those last few possessions and did certainly contribute to the Falcons stalling. But outside of a handful of throws here or there, he played very, very well. He had that big throw at the end to Patterson where, that was laying, perfect touch on that ball. So any bitter taste you might have had, that lingering sour taste that you might have had about Matt Ryan or the offense completely got washed out with that throw to Patterson. As I said earlier, he was under pressure quite a bit, used his legs very effectively in this game to keep the Falcons offense on schedule, extending plays and finding receivers down the field. Kyle Pitts, as we expected, was shadowed by Marshawn Lattimore, got off to a really fast start in this game, had a number of big opportunities early in the game. He nearly had a touchdown on the opening drive, it looked like, where he got behind Lattimore, but then Matt Ryan kind of underthrew him, threw behind him, and Pitts should have caught the ball, but couldn't adjust to the ball and dropped it, but then had that big play later to sort of get things going on the next possession. I think, Pitts got off to a fast start, but then kind of disappeared in the second half. He only had 1 target in the second half, finished the game with 3 catches for 62 yards. But despite that, the Falcons receivers stepped up big this week for really the first time all year long. And you saw it from Russell Gage, you saw it from Olamide Zaccheaus, you saw it from Cordarrelle Patterson, because he certainly wasn't contributing in the run game. We'll talk about that later. But Russell Gage led the team with 7 catches. He had 64 yards. Patterson had 126 yards on 6 catches, including that 64-yarder at the end. Zaccheaus had 3 catches for 58 yards. I think everybody saw Marvin Hall, coming down. They're looking over their shoulders like, is that Marvin Hall? What's going on? And so they stepped up their game in a major way, because they know that they might lose some playing time very shortly if they don't start stepping up. So, I'm blaming, I'm pointing the finger at the Marvin Hall signing being the cure to all the things that the Falcons ail them. But, outside of that, the skill position players were great. That's why they earned such a high grade, A minus. I can't give them too high a grade because the pass protection was not very good. Matt Ryan was hit 9 times. He was only sacked twice. And again, I think that's more testament to Matt Ryan and his performance than it was to the protection. I wasn't watching the game closely enough, if I'm being completely honest, to see if there was a specific player that was struggling more than the others. All I know is that the Jordan sack at the end of the game was given up by Jake Matthews. But for the most part, the pass protection is the only thing holding this unit back from getting a much higher grade than the A minus. Looking at the rush offense, I got to go the opposite direction. They get an F, man. It was awful. They could not run the ball at all in this game. And I think they were trying to run the ball early in this game to try to keep that Saints pass rush at bay, and it was not effective. Well, I mean, I guess it was effective because Matt Ryan wasn't getting sacked because they were running the football, but they were not moving the ball at all in this game. You saw a lot of Cordarrelle Patterson in the first half. Then he basically got, I think, 1 carry in the second half, and you saw a lot of Mike Davis in the second half, but neither of those guys really did much of anything. You even saw the Falcons try to sprinkle Felipe Franks into the mix, trying to, I guess, get some of that Taysom Hill mojo for 2 plays, but the Falcons had 20 design runs in this game. They had successful carries on just 2 of them. That's a success rate of 10%. And as I've explained many times on the podcast, you're shooting for like 40 to 45% at a minimum in terms of your success rate and your efficiency running the football. And success rate is sort of a pass-fail basis that you're measuring rushing efficiency based off of down and distance, for those that are unfamiliar with it. But in terms of trying to figure out what is a good success rate, just think of it as basically half of what a passer rating is, right? The average passer rating in the NFL is like 85. So half of that is like 42. And so that would be what an average success rate should look like. A good passing rating is 100, right? And so half of that is 50. So that would be what a good success rate would be. So if you're using those same rules, 10% success rate rushing the football is like having a 20 passer rating, and that would make you one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. That probably makes you one of the worst quarterbacks of all time if you had that. And so the only thing the Falcons were able to do on the ground was basically when Matt Ryan was scrambled. He scrambled 3 times in this game. All 3 times was successful on those runs, but those weren't design runs, so they don't count towards that 10% success rate that I cited earlier. So the running game, an F, right? They're going to have to improve in the trenches, but we'll talk about that at a later date. Moving on to the defense, the pass defense, I give them a C, right? The Saints passing game really wasn't that effective in the first half, but I think a lot of that was probably owed to the Saints dropping passes. Simeon was 5 for 11 for 34 yards in the first half. In the second half, he was 20 for 30 for 215 yards. I don't know exactly how many drops the Saints had, but I saw someone say that they had 6, and that seems to be about right. Now, to be fair, the Falcons did contest some of those throws that led to some of those drops. So defenders were sort of in the face and challenging those throws, but those were opportunities that the ball did hit the receiver's hands, and they should have caught those balls. So it's hard for me to say, I want to give the defense some credit because they were contesting those throws, but at the same time, some of them were just clear out and out drops. AJ Terrell was outstanding in this game. He had 3 pass breakups. He was consistently contesting balls. The Falcons did get some pressure on Trevor Siemian. They finished the game with 5 quarterback hits, which, I don't know off the top of my head how many they had, but it seems like probably the most, if not, or the second most that they've had all year long. So it was an improvement from previous games. 3 of those came from linebackers and cornerbacks. So that's a testament to their blitz getting home at times. So you got to give the defense some credit for making it harder for Siemian in that offense. But we saw at the end of the game, the Saints had really no problem moving the ball for the most part. And you had that penalty-laden drive, which you can't contribute to the pass defense, although Moreau did get flagged for one of those things. And, Aluakun did get flagged, but that flag was questionable in my eyes. But it's hard to be too praising with the pass defense. I'll give them a decent grade. I'll be honest. I'll tell you right now that I'm probably being a little bit too generous with some of these grades just because it's the Saints, and I'm feeling good about the Falcons beating their most hated rival. So they're getting a slight bump here. So I'll give the pass defense a C. But it doesn't feel great for the Falcons to giving up that lead so late, going up against a third-string quarterback, facing a relatively beat-up offensive line in a team that has a wide receiver core that is arguably the only one that's weaker than the Falcons wide receiver core. But at this point, beggars can't be choosers. Rush defense, I'm going to give them a B-. And that's crazy to say when you watch those first two possessions, because they were on F pace. They were on F-. They were on Q in terms of letter grades on how bad they were the first two drives. The Saints came out and on their first 7 carries had successful runs. They were averaging 9 yards a pop on those first 7 carries in the game. They wound up running the ball 9 times on their first 2 possessions. But then after that point, the Falcons basically put the clamps on the Saints running game, and their success rate thereafter for the 16 times that the Saints ran the ball after that point was, 31%. So the Saints overall finished the game with a success rate of 48% on their 25 carries, which is a good number when you look at it overall. Again, using that sort of metric, that would be like the equivalent of a 96 passer rating or whatever the case may be, which would be pretty good. But, given that, they were able to shut it down for the last 3 quarters, I'm giving them a much higher grade than that sort of overall figure seems to indicate. And so one of the things I certainly do want to focus on when I watch the film this week is how did the Falcons turn things around? Was it Anthony Rush? Because it seemed like, I started noticing Anthony Rush a lot more after the first quarter in the game. He was getting a lot of those nose tackle snaps, and Rush was a big 340, 350 pounder guy that the Falcons elevated to their practice squad as the 5th defensive line. They did not activate John Kaminsky. They did not activate Taquan Graham, as we speculated about on Friday's episode. And it was a lot of Rush at nose tackle. I saw Mike Pennell playing some defensive end. And was that the thing that helped the Falcons stop the run in the second half? That they had this basically, 700 plus pounds of beef in the middle of their defensive line, preventing the Saints from running the football? Because I do know Rush was very disruptive in this game. He led the team with 3 run stops. He had 2 tackles for loss. Could have had a 3rd one on a late Kamara run in the I think the 4th quarter on the big run, but that was called back by holding, and he nearly had Kamara in the backfield there. So, apparently, Anthony Rush was like, y'all don't need to be worried about drafting Jordan Davis. I can do that job pretty well. So, give the run defense a high grade, because we talked about at some point, you can't rely on the offense to have to get off to a fast start and make the Saints abandon the run. You're going to have to get stops. And the Falcons did that in the 2nd quarter, and 3rd quarter, and 4th quarter. They did that. So I'm giving a run defense a B- there. Special teams, I'm going to give another B-. This was probably Dustin Colquitt's best game as the punter. There was only maybe 1 questionable punt. Now, the coverage units were not great, and maybe Colquitt contributed to that. Maybe he didn't get enough hang time on those punts, but watching the game live, I didn't notice that off the jump. So we'll see if the film confirms that. But generally, I think the coverage units were bad, and Colquitt was doing a good job punting. Of course, Younghoe Koo is always reliably great. The return game, not so much. Cordarrelle Patterson did fumble on a kickoff. He was fortunately able to recover, but and I know if they had reviewed it, he would have been ruled down before the ball came out. But that doesn't necessarily leave a good taste in your mouth to see that from the return game. So when you look at the struggles of the return game, you look at the struggles of the coverage units, where Harris nearly got two big punt returns, including one where I think it was Deron Harmon that got the touchdown saving tackle from him. So it was one of those things where you had some positives from the special teams, but then you also had the negatives. So I'm going to give them a B-. Again, I'm probably giving them a little bit too much praise, thanks to Younghoe Koo and the fact that our punting game looked decent. Coverage unit, not so much, but still work in progress there. But I'll give them a B- overall. So those are sort of my grades, and we'll get into my final thoughts of the game to see if this was a turning point for the Falcons. But before we get into all of that, guys, I want to thank you for making Locked On Falcons, your first listen each and every day. And of course, it's free and available on a variety of podcast platforms. But as a recommendation for your second listen, if you on YouTube watching this now, Locked On Braves is on YouTube. I know you're still riding the high of that World Series win and see what's next for this Braves team by checking out Locked On Braves on the variety of podcast platforms. You can check out Locked On Hawks, covering the Atlanta Hawks with my boy Brad Rowland, giving you the lowdown on the Hawks start to their 2021-22 NBA season. So check that out as well. And so we'll keep the things rolling here on Locked On Falcons by telling you about the new mystery box contest over at Built Bar, where they have a contest. I think the final week to enter is this week, November 12th. And they have some great prizes. You can get a $500 gift card to multiple retailers like Amazon, Lululemon, or Under Armour. You can also get a new iPhone 13 Pro, a new Peloton bike, and of course, a year-long supply of Built Bars. Built Bars come in great flavors. Whether you're adventurous enough to guess what that mystery box flavor is going to be, you can get limited time flavors like paranormal pumpkin or blueberry muffin, or you can get the tried and trues like peanut butter brownie, salted caramel, coconut almond, my personal favorite. And of course, you want to try all the Built Bars available because Built Bars taste just like a candy bar containing 100% real chocolate. They're soft and easy to chew, but you get none of the guilt of eating a candy bar because Built Bars are healthy too. They're low in calories and sugar, high in protein and fiber. So go order yourself some today. Go enter that mystery box contest over at built.com. And when you do, make sure you use the promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your first order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. So football season is in full swing. And of course, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season with a new updated website and interface and even more odds, props, and contests. BetOnline continues to be the number one source for everything football. Even though baseball season is over, BetOnline is the number one source for basketball, boxing, even your favorite Vegas casino game. So head over to the website, use your mobile device to sign up today, and use that promo code Locked On, and you'll get a 50% welcome bonus, meaning if you deposit $500, you'll get $250 on top of that and free money to play with. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Of course, the Falcons covered this week, and basically I did not expect that to happen. And basically, when I give you a recommendation on what the Falcons do, probably your best advice is to do the opposite of that. So if I say, oh, the Saints will probably cover the 6.5 point spread, bet on the Falcons. Now, I do a little bit better when it comes to the Falcons, but this is when it comes to bets other than the Falcons. But, historically, this is why I don't bet on the Falcons, because I have no idea what's going to happen. So head on over to BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. So the question is this a turning point for the Falcons? And it's hard for me to say that because, we thought that win over Miami a couple of weeks ago was kind of a turning point for them. And then they kind of laid an egg last week against Carolina. They had an opportunity to win that game, but, didn't make the plays that they needed to. This week, you can say they had an opportunity to lose this game, but didn't make the plays that they needed to. So it's hard for me to get that sort of buy-in to say that this is the turning point that the Falcons. It could be, right? We'll see what this team can do against Dallas. We'll see what they can do on Thursday night against New England. If you had asked me 2 weeks ago when we were talking about the potential for this team making the playoffs, I would have told you then, Carolina and New Orleans are winnable games for them. Dallas and New England are less winnable games for them. But who knows? Dallas looked vulnerable at home, I think for the first time in a long time, but they're going to present some challenges. New England, we know that New England's game plan is going to be take away Kyle Pitts, and we'll see if the rest of the receivers can step up in a major way like they did today. So we'll see how that plays out. But it's one of those things where, like, I want to buy in on the Falcons. And again, this is not me being negative. I'm cherishing this win, right? Because for me, it looks like right now I'm sort of considering it to be a one-off because we haven't necessarily seen this Falcon team do the things that they need to do to win each and every game. But they did it on Sunday. And as I said earlier, because it's against the Saints, it feels even better. Although, I'm still probably going to have to take some medicine because I'm having heart palpitations. Like normally when the Falcons, you knew that they were going to let the Saints back into the game. You knew that was going to happen. But like, because it's the Saints and like, it feels, the wins feel better than the losses feel worse because it's your rival team. if this had been, any other opponent that the Falcons had this year, the Panthers, it would have been the Bucks. It would have been like, yeah, it sucks, but like whatever, but because it's the Saints, like you feel every back and forth, every gain, every loss, every sort of thing. So all of that to sit here and say, like, they did the thing that they needed to do. We talked about, they didn't get off to the fast start that we needed to, but they held a lead for, for the first three, 58 minutes of this game or whatever it was. And they were up 10-0 at halftime. And so that kind of forced the Saints to not have to run the ball as much in the second half. But the key was that they stopped the run, right? We knew that it wasn't just going to be a fast start. They're going to have to stop the run because the Saints aren't going to be as quick to abandon the run as other teams have been when they are playing down. And the Saints and the Falcons stopped the run in the second quarter. They stopped the run in the third quarter. And so when the Saints did finally truly abandon the run, in midway through the third quarter, it was due not just to the lead, but to the Falcons doing the thing that they needed to do on defense, which was stop the run. And then on offense, we knew that, while Kyle Pitts did have his way with Marshawn Lattimore on those first couple of drives, we knew that Kyle Pitts was probably not going to have this 12 target, 10 target game, 8 catches or whatever the case may be going up against Lattimore. Lattimore is probably as the type of corner that I was going to say the prototype, but probably Jalen Ramsey is probably the prototype. But in terms of second tier corners that you would want to go toe to toe against Kyle Pitts, that Lattimore is the type of guy that you want. Like we've seen his success against Mike Evans, who's basically the same size as Kyle Pitts is. And so like you knew that you probably not going to be able to rely on Kyle Pitts, down in and down out, drive in and drive out this game. And so you needed your other receivers to step up. And so basically my point is the Falcons did exactly what you wanted to see them to do in order to overcome the Saints. Again, despite my heart palpitations, much to my chagrin, they did the thing that they needed to do in order to come away with a win here. And so part of you wants to sit here and say, okay, this is a turning point for this team. This team finally stepped up. They finally stopped the run. They were finally able to get some production outside of their wide receiver group that wasn't from Calvin Ridley. And so that's a positive sign. But to me, it feels like this is the first time that we've seen it this year. And while this win was not expected from me, it wasn't a surprise to me because basically what I said on Friday was like the Falcons all these things can come together for the Falcons this week because it's the Saints and whatever the case may be. And, that would be the first time that all season long that would have happened. And that can lead to a win. But because we haven't seen this team consistently do that week in and week out, it's hard to necessarily expect that going into this game. Now that they did it, can we expect it coming out of this game that this is going to be the type of team that we see, each and every week? That when the thing that we talk about with the Falcons is like typically on defense, especially when we talk about what do opposing teams want to do, they want to run the football. They want to have their quarterback to sit back in the pocket and pick apart their defense, or they have this mobile quarterback that they want to see that guy extend plays. And the Falcons, historically speaking, and this is not just a 2021 thing, this seems to go back, 10, 15 years, that whatever the opposing team wanted to do, the Falcons would essentially let them do it. And they, the thing that the Saints wanted to do was run the football. And it looked like for the first 2 drives, the Falcons were going to let them do it. And they basically turned off the faucet, I guess you could say, as far as that goes. So can this team continue to be the team moving forward against Dallas next week? They're going to want to sit back. They're going to want to run the football, and they're going to want Dak Prescott to sit back and pick apart this defense with his weapons. Can they do that? We'll find out together. But for me, it's hard for me to get the sort of buy-in, all of this to say, because they had an opportunity 2 weeks ago to turn things around and sort of do it. So maybe this is the turning point. Maybe we'll look back a couple of weeks from now after a strong performance against Dallas, after a strong performance on Thursday night against New England, after a strong performance against Jacksonville, although, you can never assume anything with the Falcons when it comes to bad teams. And then we'll be going into that Tampa Bay game in week 13 being like, okay, we can legitimately go toe-to-toe with this Bucs team, because the team that we have seen these last 3 weeks consistently, a good Falcons team has consistently shown up in those 3 weeks. We have made teams play left-handed. If that's the case, then we may be looking back at this game as the turning point. But right now, as I often say on this podcast, I'll believe it when I see it. And right now, just because I've seen it one time does not mean that I'm automatically going to assume that I'm going to see it, every other time moving forward. So, it could be a turning point for this Falcon team, but right now I'm skeptical, as I am often am. But the positive for this game is, you guys can erase all those mock drafts that have Jordan Davis as the Falcons pick in the first round, because Anthony Rush is the new Jordan Davis. Who needs Jordan Davis when you got Anthony Rush, man? And this just basically proves the point I was trying to make all week on Twitter, is that you don't need to invest a first round pick in order to get a wide body. If it winds up, the film winds up telling me that Anthony Rush was the cause of the Falcons' rushing success, being that big body in the middle. We literally found a guy off the street that can do that job. It doesn't mean that, you can't, there isn't room for upgrades there, but I don't think you need to invest a first round pick in order to get that. So I'm happy for that reason alone. If you Georgia fans want the Falcons to draft somebody, I don't know if he's draft eligible, but Jalen Carter is probably the guy y'all need to be talking a little bit more about, that, because that dude could actually rush the quarterback. So that's what I would recommend for you moving forward. Gotta throw some shade at the Georgia fans. No, but Jalen Carter, he's what would they call him? Oh, he's a dog, man. So there you guys leave it. I'm done talking. I'm just rambling here at the end of the show. So if you guys have any feedback that you want to provide me, if you don't ever want me to call anybody a dog again, you can do so by hitting me up on Twitter at Locked On Falcons, on Facebook at Locked On Falcons, or you can send an email to lockedonfalcons@mail.com. Of course, thank you for making Locked On Falcons your first listen each and every day. And of course, I always have recommendations for what your second listens should be. Of course, they should be Locked On Hawks, Locked On Braves. If you want to make a little bit of money, Locked On Bets. But of course, you always got you covered on the Peacock and Williamson podcast, our flagship NFL show here on the Locked On Podcast Network, giving you insight into all 32 NFL teams, whether that be the Falcons, the Saints, the Broncos, the Cowboys, whoever. Check them out on Peacock and Williamson, free and available on all podcast platforms. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow with a potential guest to talk more about this Falcons game. I hope you had a great weekend. I hope you have a relaxing Sunday evening, because Sunday afternoon was not very relaxing. But appreciate it, guys. Until then.